Elijah Graves stood frozen in his cabin doorway, staring at the woman who had just spoken her name. The words hung in the cold air between them like smoke from a dying fire. Seraphina Ashworth. The surname struck him like a physical blow. Behind him, 8-year-old Marcus clutched his younger sister Lily's hand. Both children peered around their father's legs at the stranger. She was tall, strong-shouldered, with skin the color of rich earth and eyes that held secrets. Her worn leather coat and mountain boots marked her as the woman they called too wild. The winter of 1883 had been merciless to the territory around Dustswell. Snow buried the small frontier town for weeks at a time. Elijah's homestead sat 3 miles out, where the wind cut through every crack in the cabin walls, where Grace's grave lay beneath a blanket of white. 2 years had passed since fever took his wife. 2 years of watching his children grow feral without a mother's touch. Marcus had blackened another boy's eye just last week. Lily hadn't spoken to anyone outside the family since the funeral. The farm was failing. The livestock grew thin. The townspeople whispered that the Graves family carried a curse. Elijah had swallowed his pride and approached old Henrik at the general store, asked about hiring help for the winter. The Norwegian had laughed until his belly shook. "You want the mountain woman. Good luck taming that one." Everyone knew Seraphina Jones. She lived alone in a cabin high up where the pines grew thick, came to town twice a month for supplies and nothing else, turned down every marriage proposal with the same cold stare. The women said she practiced witchcraft. The men said she was too wild to break, but winter was coming down hard from the peaks. Even she couldn't survive alone in that thin air when the real cold hit. Henrik had made the arrangements, food and shelter through spring thaw. In exchange, help with the children and the farm work. A business transaction between two people the town had given up on. Now she stood on his threshold. Seraphina Ashworth. The name thundered through his memory. Grace whispering stories in the dark. The plantation where she was born. The master's name carved into her childhood nightmares. Ashworth. Always Ashworth. Elijah's hands trembled. He gripped the doorframe to steady himself. Seraphina's brow furrowed. She shifted her travel pack to her other shoulder. "You having second thoughts?" Her voice carried the mountains in it, whined through pine needles. He forced himself to breathe. "No, come in." She stepped past him into the cabin's warmth. Her eyes swept the modest space. The stone fireplace where embers glowed. The rough-hewn table where the children took their meals. Grace's rocking chair in the corner, empty for 2 years. Marcus and Lily hung back near the fireplace. Seraphina crouched down to their level. "I'm Seraphina. You must be the brave ones who have been taking care of your papa." Lily buried her face against Marcus's shoulder. The boy straightened his spine. "We don't need taking care of." "Course not. Strong as you are, I bet you could teach me a thing or two about mountain living." Something in her tone made Marcus's defensive posture soften. Seraphina rose and turned back to Elijah. He was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. Fear mixed with something else. Recognition, maybe. "The children's room is upstairs. You can take the back room down here." He showed her to a small space behind the kitchen. A narrow bed, a chest for her belongings, a window that looked out toward the mountains she'd called home. Meals at sunrise and sunset. Children do their letters after breakfast. Rest is up to you. She nodded, set her pack on the bed. "Mr. Graves," he stopped in the doorway. "What happened to their mother?" The question hung between them. Outside, wind rattled the shutters. "Fever, 2 winters past." "I'm sorry." He left her to settle in. Returned to the main room where his children waited by the fire. Marcus's face was tight with worry. Lily had found her voice. "Is she staying, Papa? Through the winter? Will she leave like Mama did?" The question cut deep. Elijah pulled his daughter close. "Mama didn't want to leave. This is different." But nothing felt different. Everything felt dangerous and familiar at once. The way Seraphina moved through the cabin, the way she hummed under her breath while unpacking, the way the firelight caught her profile. Grace had told him about her sister, sold away when they were babies. A girl with the same eyes, the same stubborn chin, the same birthmark shaped like a crescent moon on her wrist. He watched Serafina roll up her sleeves to wash her hands in the basin. There, pale against her dark skin, was the mark Grace had described 100 times. His dead wife's sister had walked into his cabin, spoken the name that haunted Grace's dreams, and he was the only one who knew. Outside, the wind picked up. Snow began to fall again. The long winter stretched ahead of them all. That first night, Elijah lay awake listening to the wind. Down the hall, Serafina moved quietly in her room. The floorboards knew her weight now. The cabin had accepted another heartbeat. He stared at the ceiling beams Grace had helped him raise. Her voice echoed in the darkness. Stories told in whispers after the children slept. The plantation house with its white columns. The master who took what he wanted from the women in the quarters. The sister torn from her arms when they were barely old enough to walk. Her name was Sira, Grace had whispered. She had my eyes, my stubborn chin, and this mark. Grace had traced the crescent scar on her wrist. We both had it. Mama said it meant we'd find each other again someday. Grace died believing that someday would never come. Morning brought the sound of Serafina in the kitchen. Elijah found her stoking the fire, coffee already brewing. She moved through the space with quiet efficiency. No wasted motion. No unnecessary noise. Marcus appeared at the top of the stairs, hair standing in all directions. Lily followed, thumb in her mouth despite being too old for it. "Morning," Serafina said. She poured coffee for Elijah, milk for the children. "Eggs are cooking." The children ate in silence, watched her from the corners of their eyes. She ignored their stares and tended the stove. After breakfast, she followed Elijah to the barn. The milk cow was off her feed. The chickens had stopped laying. 2 years of half-hearted farming showed in every sagging beam and broken fence rail. Serafina ran her hands over the cow's flanks, checked her eyes and teeth. "When's the last time she had fresh hay?" Elijah's jaw tightened. "Hay's expensive." Not as expensive as losing her. She was right. He knew she was right. That made it worse. They worked through the morning in careful silence. She mucked stalls while he mended harness. Every now and then she hummed under her breath, a melody that stopped his hands mid-motion. Grace's lullaby, the one she sang to the children when storms came, when fever burned through their small bodies, when the world felt too big and dangerous for little hearts to bear. The tune died on Serafina's lips when she noticed him staring. Something wrong? No, nothing. But everything was wrong. Everything was impossible and true at the same time. At midday, they returned to the cabin. The children had spread their school books across the kitchen table. Marcus struggled with his letters. Lily drew pictures in the margins of her slate. Serafina sat beside them, showed Marcus how to hold his pencil steady, praised Lily's careful drawings of horses and birds. "You have an artist's eye," she told the girl. Lily beamed. The first real smile Elijah had seen from her in months. That evening, after the children were in bed, Serafina found Elijah on the front porch. He sat in the cold, smoking his pipe and staring at the mountains. "Beautiful country," she said. "Harsh country." She settled into the chair beside him, Grace's chair. The wood creaked under her weight. "Your wife, what was she like?" The question hung in the freezing air. Elijah took a long draw from his pipe. "Strong, stronger than she looked, came from nothing and built something good here. She from these parts." His hand tightened on the pipe stem. "South, long way south." Serafina nodded, gazed out at the star-scattered sky. "I came from the south too, don't remember much about it. The folks who raised me found me wandering the mountain roads when I was barely walking, half-starved, speaking words they didn't recognize." Elijah's chest constricted. Grace had told him the same story from the other side. How her sister was loaded into a wagon and driven away. How the little girl had fought and screamed until her voice gave out. "You ever wonder about your real family?" "Every day." Her voice carried old pain. "Had a sister once, or thought I did, dreams maybe, a little girl who looked just like me. We used to sing together." She began to hum again. The same melody that had haunted Grace's dreams. that she'd pass to her children in moments of tenderness. Elijah stood abruptly. The chair scraped against the porch boards. Getting late. He left her sitting in the darkness, fled to his room and closed the door, leaned against it like something was chasing him. In the dresser drawer beneath his spare shirts lay Grace's Bible, her diary tucked inside its pages. He'd read those entries 100 times, memorized every word about the sister she'd lost. Sira had my birthmark, the crescent moon on her wrist. Mama said it meant we were bound together across any distance. Elijah's hands shook as he turned the pages, found the entry from their wedding night. I dreamed about Sira again. She was grown up now, beautiful and strong, living free somewhere in the mountains. Elijah says dreams can come true if you have faith enough. I want to believe him. The diary slipped from his fingers, hit the floor with a soft thud. Down the hall, Serafina was still humming. The sound drifted through the cabin walls, wrapped around his heart and squeezed until he couldn't breathe. Grace's sister was sleeping under his roof, caring for Grace's children, bringing life back to the home they'd built together, and he was the only one who knew the truth. Outside, the wind picked up, rattled the windows in their frames, carried secrets through the mountain passes where they could do no harm. But secrets had a way of finding their way home, of demanding to be spoken aloud. Elijah pressed his face against the cold window glass, watched clouds gather over the peaks. A storm was coming. He could feel it in his bones. 3 weeks passed. The cabin found its rhythm. Serafina rose before dawn to tend the fire. Elijah worked the frozen ground, preparing for spring planting. The children grew less guarded, more willing to laugh. But the weight of unspoken truth pressed down on Elijah's shoulders. Every shared meal, every quiet evening by the fire, every time Serafina hummed Grace's lullaby without knowing its history. On a bitter February morning, she found him splitting wood behind the barn. His axe bit deep into the oak. Splinters flew in all directions. "The children are asking questions," she said. He buried the blade again, muscles straining against the stubborn grain. "What kind of questions?" "About their mother, about me, whether I'm staying past winter." The axe stuck halfway through. Elijah worked it free with sharp, violent motions. "What did you tell them?" "That I don't know." He set another log on the chopping block, raised the axe high. "Maybe you should." The words hit harder than any blade. Serafina stepped closer. Her breath made clouds in the cold air. "I've been thinking about my past, about the family I lost." Elijah's hands froze on the axe handle. "Sometimes I catch you staring at me, like you've seen a ghost." He lowered the tool, faced her across the scattered wood chips. "Maybe I have." "What's that supposed to mean?" The question hung between them, raw and demanding. Elijah's throat worked but no words came. A shout from the house broke the moment. Marcus came running through the snow, tears streaming down his face. "Papa, something's wrong with Lily." They found the girl curled in Grace's rocking chair, burning with fever. Her small body shook with chills that wouldn't stop. Serafina knelt beside the chair, pressed her palm to Lily's forehead. The child's eyes were glassy, unfocused. "How long has she been like this?" "Just started," Marcus said. "She was drawing, then she fell over." Serafina's face went grim. She'd seen this before. The sudden onset, the rapid climb of temperature, the same fever that had taken Grace. "Get me cool water, clean cloths. And that bottle of willow bark tea from my room." Elijah stood frozen, watching history repeat itself. The same chair, the same helpless terror. "Elijah!" Serafina's voice cut through his paralysis. "I need you here, not lost in whatever's haunting you." He moved then, fetched water from the well, helped strip Lily's sweat-soaked clothes, watched Serafina work with steady hands and quiet confidence. She brewed teas from herbs that grew wild in the mountains, bathed Lily's burning skin with cool water, sang softly while the child drifted in and out of consciousness. The same lullaby Grace had hummed, but Serafina added verses Elijah had never heard, words in a language that sounded familiar but strange. "Where did you learn that song?" "My mama, the one who raised me in the mountains. She said it came from the old country, Before the ships brought us here, night fell. Lily's fever climbed higher. Serafina never left her side, changed the cooling cloths, spooned medicine between cracked lips, sang the ancient words that seemed to reach something deep inside the child. Elijah paced the cabin. Marcus curled up on the floor beside his sister's chair, refused to leave even when exhaustion made his eyes heavy. "She's not going to die, is she?" the boy whispered. Serafina's hand stilled on Lily's burning forehead. "Not if I can help it." The fever broke near dawn. Lily's breathing eased. Her skin cooled. She opened her eyes and asked for water in a voice small as a bird's. Serafina helped her drink, smoothed the damp hair from her face. Marcus finally let himself sleep. Exhaustion pulled him under where he lay on the floor. Elijah found Serafina on the front porch. She sat in Grace's chair, staring at the mountains. Her hands trembled with delayed shock. "You saved her. Maybe, fever's unpredictable, could come back. You knew what to do, the herbs, the songs." She nodded, pulled her shawl tighter against the morning cold. "Lost my mama to fever when I was 12. Learned everything I could after that. Swore I'd never watch someone die from something I might have prevented." Elijah sat beside her. The porch boards creaked under his weight. "My wife died the same way, same fever, same chair. I figured." They sat in silence, watched the sun climb over the peaks, paint the snow-covered valley in shades of gold and pink. "You blame yourself," Serafina said. "Should have done more, found better medicine, taken her to Denver." "Sometimes doing more just means holding on longer, doesn't change the ending." Her words carried the weight of experience, of losses that had shaped her into someone who could face death without flinching. "The children are lucky to have you," she said. "They're lucky to have you too." Something shifted between them, an understanding that went deeper than words. They'd both lost people they loved. Both carried guilt that wouldn't fade. Both found themselves responsible for young lives that depended on their strength. A rider appeared on the road, moving fast through the morning light. Elijah squinted against the sun's glare, recognized Henrik from the general store. The Norwegian pulled up in front of the cabin. His horse's sides heaved from the hard ride. "Elijah, Miss Jones." He tipped his hat. "Got news from town. Stranger came through yesterday, asking questions about folks with the Ashworth name." Serafina went still. "What kind of stranger?" "Well-dressed man, southern accent, said he was looking for family members, had money to pay for information." Elijah's blood turned to ice. He'd heard stories about men who hunted down former slaves, claimed they were still property under old laws, dragged people back to places they'd fought to escape. "Anyone tell him anything?" Henrik shrugged. "You know how folks talk, especially when there's money involved." The Norwegian rode away, left them sitting in the cold morning air. The mountains suddenly felt less like protection and more like walls closing in. Serafina stood, walked to the porch rail, gripped the weathered wood until her knuckles went white. "I should go." "No." The word came out harder than Elijah intended. She turned to face him. Something dangerous flickered in her eyes. "You don't understand what you're risking. What having me here could cost your family. I understand plenty." "Do you? Do you really?" She waited for an answer he couldn't give, not without revealing everything he'd kept hidden, all the truth that burned inside him day and night. Inside the cabin, Lily called for water. Her voice was stronger now. The fever had passed but left her weak as a newborn. Serafina moved toward the door, stopped when Elijah caught her arm. "We'll figure this out." "Will we?" The question held more than worry about mysterious strangers. It held all the unspoken tension that had been building between them, all the secrets that stood like walls between what was and what might be. She went inside to tend the child, left Elijah alone on the porch. The mountains stood silent around him, keeping their own secrets, offering no answers to the storm that was coming. The stranger's presence hung over the valley like smoke from a wildfire. Elijah caught himself watching the road, scanning the tree line. Every shadow could hide danger, every hoofbeat could bring ruin. Serafina felt it too. The way she moved through the cabin had changed. Quick glances toward the windows, hand lingering near the knife she kept at her belt, a wildness returning to her eyes. 3 days passed without word from town. Lily grew stronger. Color returned to her cheeks, but the threat of the unknown rider made every small joy feel fragile. On the fourth morning, Elijah found Seraphina in the barn. She was treating a cut on the old mare's leg. Her hands worked with practiced gentleness. The horse stood calm under her touch. She got tangled in the fence wire, Seraphina said without looking up. Deep gash but clean, should heal fine. Elijah moved closer, watched her fingers probe the wound, check for embedded debris. The same careful attention she'd given Lily during the fever. You have a gift with healing. Mountain folk taught me, said my hands carried something special. She pressed a poultice against the cut. The mare nickered softly, pressed her nose against Seraphina's shoulder. Animals trust you. Animals don't lie. Don't pretend to be something they're not. The words carried weight, an accusation wrapped in observation. Elijah felt heat rise in his chest. People lie for lots of reasons. Name one good one. He could have said protection, could have said love, could have said sometimes the truth does more harm than silence. Instead, he said nothing. Seraphina straightened, wiped her hands on a rag. When she turned to face him, something had shifted in her expression. I know you've been asking questions about me. The words hit like a physical blow. Elijah's jaw tightened. Who told you that? Henrik's wife mentioned it to Martha Wells. Martha told her sister. Small towns have big mouths. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see gold flecks in her dark eyes. What did you want to know that you couldn't ask me directly? The barn felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker. Elijah's hands clenched at his sides. Maybe I wanted to make sure you were safe to have around my children. And what did you find out? Nothing that concerned me, but something that interested you. They stood facing each other across the hay-scattered floor. The mare watched with liquid eyes, sensing tension in the air. Everyone has a past, Elijah said finally. Some pasts are more dangerous than others. Before he could respond, Marcus came running into the barn. His face was flushed with excitement and fear. Papa, there's people coming, a whole bunch of them. Elijah followed his son outside. A group of riders approached from town, 8 men on horseback. Led by Jacob Morse, who owned the largest spread in the valley. They pulled up in front of the cabin. Morse dismounted. His face was set in hard lines. The other men stayed mounted, hands resting easy on their gun belts. Elijah. Miss Jones. Seraphina had emerged from the barn. She stood straight-backed, chin lifted, every inch the mountain woman who'd never bent to any man's will. Jacob, Elijah said, what brings you out here? Concerned citizens. We've been talking about your arrangement here. What about it? Morse glanced at Seraphina. His eyes held the cold judgment of a man who decided someone else's fate. This woman's brought trouble to our valley. Stranger asking questions, offering money for information about folks who should be left alone. That's not her fault, isn't it? One of the other riders spoke up. Tom Bradley, whose farm bordered the town limits. Why's someone looking for her if she's got nothing to hide? Seraphina stepped forward. Her hand didn't move toward her knife, but the threat was there, coiled in her posture. I've got nothing to hide from anyone in this valley. Maybe not from us, Morse said, but that stranger's still asking questions, still offering money. Sooner or later, someone's going to take it. What are you suggesting? That you move on. Find somewhere else to winter, before this gets complicated for all of us. The words hung in the cold air, a threat wrapped in neighborly concern. Elijah felt anger rise in his chest, hot and clean. She's staying. The finality in his voice surprised everyone, including himself. Elijah, Morse said carefully, think about your children. Think about what association with the wrong people could cost them. I am thinking about my children. They need her. They need stability, safety, not whatever trouble she's running from. The only trouble here is you men riding onto my land and making demands. Morse's face darkened. The mounted men shifted in their saddles. Hands moved closer to weapons. We're trying to be reasonable. Then be reasonable somewhere else. For a moment, violence hung in the air between them. Elijah could feel it building, the moment when words would give way to action. Then Serafina spoke. "I appreciate the concern, but I can take care of myself." Her voice was calm, steady, but Elijah heard the mountain wildness underneath. The part of her that had never been tamed. Morse studied her face, looking for weakness, finding only strength. Strangers still out there, still asking questions. Let him ask, and if he finds what he's looking for, then he finds it. The simplicity of her answer seemed to unsettle the men. They'd expected fear, pleading, some sign that their threats had found their mark. Instead, they found a woman who'd faced worse things than small-town bullies, who'd survived by being stronger than whatever tried to break her. Morse remounted his horse. The others followed his lead. "Your choice, Elijah, but choices have consequences." They rode away, left dust hanging in the air and tension crackling between the three adults who remained. Marcus and Lily emerged from where they'd been hiding behind the cabin. Both children looked scared, old enough to understand danger even if they couldn't name it. "Are they coming back?" Lily whispered. Elijah knelt beside his daughter, smoothed her hair with gentle hands. "I won't let anyone hurt you, either of you." But even as he said the words, he wondered if he could keep that promise. The valley was changing, lines were being drawn, and he'd just chosen a side that put his family at risk. Serafina was watching him, something new in her expression, gratitude mixed with confusion, as if she couldn't understand why he'd defended her. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." "Why?" The question demanded an answer he couldn't give, not without revealing everything, all the truth that connected them across years and miles and loss. "Because it was right." She nodded slowly, but her eyes said she knew there was more, that whatever he was hiding ran deeper than simple decency. That night, after the children were asleep, she came to him again, found him on the porch, staring at the mountains. "The stranger. If he finds me, it could mean trouble for your family. Then we'll deal with it." "We," the word hung between them, heavy with implications, with promises neither of them had spoken aloud. "You're part of this family now, whether you meant to be or not." She was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft as falling snow. "I've never been part of anything before. Don't know if I know how." "Neither do I. Guess we'll figure it out together." The mountains kept their silence, held their secrets close, but something had shifted between the two people on the porch, a bond forged in shared danger, in the choice to stand together against whatever was coming. The mysterious rider arrived on a Tuesday morning when the sky hung low and gray. Elijah saw him first, a lone figure on horseback, moving with the careful pace of someone who'd traveled far and had important business to conduct. The man was well-dressed, black coat and polished boots, hat tilted at an angle that spoke of eastern cities and comfortable money. His horse was quality stock, fed and groomed and cared for by someone who understood value. Elijah set down his axe, called toward the cabin, "Serafina, company coming." She appeared in the doorway, took one look at the approaching rider and went very still. The mountain wildness crept back into her posture, ready to run or fight depending on what the next few minutes brought. The rider pulled up 20 feet from the porch, close enough to talk, far enough to avoid seeming threatening. His eyes moved over the modest homestead, the patched roof, the children's faces peering from behind their father. "Good morning. I'm looking for Miss Serafina Ashworth." His voice carried the soft drawl of Georgia or Alabama, places where Spanish moss hung from ancient oaks and the past clung to everything with stubborn fingers. Serafina stepped onto the porch, chin lifted, shoulders straight. "I'm Serafina Jones. Jones by choice perhaps, but Ashworth by birth." The words hit the air between them with the weight of revelation. Elijah felt his world tilt sideways. Everything he'd suspected but never dared hope was true. The stranger dismounted, removed his hat with old-world courtesy. "Thomas Ashworth III. I believe we share a father." Serafina's face went pale. She gripped the porch rail for support. "That's impossible." "I'm afraid it's quite possible and quite true." Thomas reached into his coat, pulled out a leather portfolio thick with documents. I've been searching for you for 3 years, ever since Father's death. He left instructions, provisions for all his children, even those born in the quarters. The words fell like stones into still water, ripples of meaning spreading outward, touching everything, changing everything. Your father owned slaves, Serafina said. Her voice carried ice and fire in equal measure. He did, to his great shame in later years. He spent his final decade trying to make amends. Thomas opened the portfolio, showed her official papers, legal documents bearing seals and signatures. There were 3 children born to women in the quarters. I've found 2 of them. You're the third. Serafina's hands shook as she looked at the papers, her name written in careful script, dates that matched her fragmented memories, evidence of a past she tried to forget. One of the others, Thomas continued, a girl named Grace. I found records of her sale to a plantation in Mississippi. Elijah's blood turned to ice. Grace's name spoken aloud by this stranger who held pieces of her history in his manicured hands. What happened to her? Serafina whispered. Thomas's face grew somber. She died 2 years ago, fever, according to the records. She'd gained her freedom after the war, married a Buffalo soldier named Elijah Graves. The world stopped turning. Serafina turned to stare at Elijah with eyes wide as mountain lakes. Your wife. Her voice was barely audible. Your wife was my sister. Elijah opened his mouth, but no words came. The truth he'd carried alone for months hung naked in the cold air. You knew. Accusation crept into her tone. You knew and you said nothing. I suspected. I wasn't certain. Weren't you? She stepped off the porch, moved toward him with predator grace. The children shrank back against the cabin wall. The way you stared, the questions you asked, the look on your face when I told you my name. Serafina, don't say anything. Thomas cleared his throat. The sound broke through their confrontation. If I may interrupt, there are practical matters to discuss. Serafina whirled to face him. Tears streaked her cheeks, but her voice was steady. What kind of practical matters? Your inheritance. Father left each of his children a substantial sum, enough to live comfortably anywhere you choose. He handed her another document, legal papers that transformed her from a mountain woman scraping by into someone with options, with choices. There's also a house in Charleston, property in Virginia. You could live anywhere, do anything. The offer hung in the air between them, freedom from the harsh mountain winters, from the suspicious townspeople, from the man who'd lied to her for months. And if I refuse, the money remains in trust, the properties will be sold, your portion donated to charity as you see fit. Thomas tucked the papers back into his portfolio. I don't need an answer today. Take time to consider. He mounted his horse, settled his hat at the proper angle. I'll be staying at the hotel in town for the remainder of the week if you have questions. He rode away, left them standing in the wreckage of everything they'd thought they knew. Serafina turned on Elijah. Her face was a mask of betrayal and rage. How long have you known? Since the first night, when you said your name, and you said nothing. I wasn't sure how. How about the truth? How about honesty? She began to pace, energy crackling around her in dangerous waves. All those times you stared at me. Was it me you were seeing, or her? Both, neither, I don't know. That's not good enough. Marcus stepped forward. His young face was confused and frightened. What's happening? Why is everyone angry? Serafina knelt beside him. Her voice gentled when she spoke to the child. Your mama and I were sisters. Your papa knew but didn't tell us. Why didn't he tell? Out of the mouths of babes. The question Elijah couldn't answer for himself. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, Serafina said. Even when they mean well. She stood, faced Elijah across the space that now felt wide as a canyon. I need time to think. Serafina, please. Time, away from here. Away from you. She went into the cabin, emerged with her travel pack and winter coat, the same one she'd carried when she first arrived. Where will you go? The mountains, where I can think clearly. It's not safe. That stranger might not be the only one looking for you. I'll take my chances. She started toward the tree line, stopped when Lily called after her. Are you coming back? The question hung in the cold air. Serafina looked back at the three faces watching her, the children who'd become her family, the man who'd betrayed her trust. I don't know. She disappeared into the pine forest, left Elijah alone with his children and the weight of truth finally spoken. The mountains swallowed her up, kept her as they'd always kept their own. That night, Lily crawled into her father's bed, pressed her small face against his chest. Is Serafina going to leave forever, like Mama did? Elijah held his daughter close, breathed in the scent of her hair, sweet and innocent and trusting despite everything. I don't know, baby. I hope not. Did you really lie to her? The question cut deep, delivered with a child's brutal honesty. I kept a secret I should have shared. Are you going to tell her you're sorry if she gives me the chance? But the mountains kept their silence, gave no sign whether Serafina would ever come back, whether forgiveness was possible when trust had been broken so completely. Elijah lay awake listening to the wind, wondering if love could survive the weight of hidden truths, if some secrets were too heavy for any relationship to bear. Outside, snow began to fall, covering tracks, hiding trails, making the world clean and white and new, but some stains went too deep for snow to cover. Some wounds needed more than time to heal. 3 days passed without word from Serafina. The cabin felt hollow. Food tasted flat. The children moved through their routines with quiet sadness. On the fourth morning, Elijah found her sitting on Grace's grave. Snow dusted her shoulders. Her breath made clouds in the cold air. She'd been there for hours. I've been thinking about forgiveness, she said without looking up. Whether some betrayals can be mended. Elijah approached slowly, stopped a respectful distance away. And what did you decide? That my sister would have understood why you kept the secret. She traced Grace's name carved into the wooden marker. Her fingers lingered on each letter. She always protected people she loved, even when it cost her. I should have told you. Yes, you should have. The admission hung between them, simple and true and painful. But I understand why you didn't. The truth was too big, too complicated. She stood, brushed snow from her coat. For the first time in days, she looked directly at him. I met with Thomas yesterday, in town. Elijah's chest tightened. What did you decide? That I don't want his money, don't want his guilt offerings. Relief flooded through him, followed immediately by guilt at feeling relieved. But I do want one thing from him. What? Stories about Grace. Everything he learned about her life before you, before freedom. She walked toward the cabin. Elijah fell into step beside her. I'm going to ask him to use my inheritance differently, help other families like ours. People caught between worlds. They reached the porch. The children's faces appeared in the window, hope and uncertainty warring in their expressions. Are you staying? Elijah asked. That depends. On what? On whether you can love me for who I am, not because I remind you of her. The question cut to the heart of everything, all the confusion and guilt and growing affection that had tangled around his heart. I fell in love with Grace because she was brave, stubborn, fiercely protective of the people she cared about. He faced her on the porch where they'd shared so many conversations. I'm falling in love with you for the same reasons. Not because you're her sister, because you're you. She studied his face, looking for lies, finding only truth spoken with quiet intensity. The children need stability, not another person who might leave. Then don't leave. I won't. If you promise me something, anything. No more secrets, even the painful ones, even the truths that might hurt. I promise, she nodded, some tension leaving her shoulders. Then let's go inside. Before the children break the window with their noses pressed against it. They entered the cabin together. Marcus and Lily rushed to embrace Serafina. Their relief was pure and uncomplicated. The way children loved when they felt safe. Are you our new mama now? Lily asked. Serafina looked at Elijah over the child's head, a question in her eyes. If that's what you want, he said. If that's what we all want. I want it, Marcus said firmly. You make Papa smile again. And you sing Mama's songs, Lily added, but with new words too. The truth of it settled around them, not replacing what had been lost, adding to it, building something new on foundations of shared grief and growing love. That evening, Thomas came to the cabin, brought documents to sign, legal papers that would transform Seraphina's inheritance into a fund for displaced families. "You're certain about this?" he asked. "It's a substantial sum." "I'm certain." She signed her name with steady strokes, Seraphina Jones, the name she'd chosen for herself. Thomas gathered the papers, prepared to leave. "For what it's worth, I think Father would be proud. This is better than anything he envisioned." After he left, they sat by the fire. The children played quietly on the floor. Seraphina hummed Grace's lullaby while she mended one of Marcus's shirts. "Will you teach me the rest of it?" Elijah asked. "The verses Grace never knew. They're in the old language. The words our grandmother spoke. Then teach me those too." She began to sing softly, words that connected them to ancestors who'd survived unimaginable hardships, who'd passed down songs as inheritance, music that traveled wherever their children traveled. Spring came early that year. The snow melted in rushing streams down the mountainsides. The ground thawed enough for planting, for building, for growing things that would take root and flourish. Elijah and Seraphina were married in April, a simple ceremony with the children as witnesses. No preacher was available who would perform the service, so they spoke their vows to each other under the open sky. The townspeople gradually accepted what they couldn't change. Seraphina's generosity with her inheritance bought tolerance, then respect, then genuine affection from families she helped through hard times. She established a clinic in town, treated injuries and illnesses with mountain remedies passed down through generations, delivered babies and eased the passing of the old, became someone people turned to in their darkest hours. The cabin expanded, new rooms for the growing family, a larger kitchen where neighbors gathered for meals and conversation, space for the children Seraphina and Elijah hoped to have together. They created a small shrine for Grace in the garden, a place where her memory lived alongside growing things, where the children could talk to their first mother while their second mother tended vegetables and flowers. Marcus grew tall and strong, learned to track animals and read weather signs, inherited his father's quiet strength and his mother's stubbornness. Both of them, the one who bore him and the one who raised him, Lily became an artist, drew pictures of their life that captured joy and sorrow in equal measure. Her favorite subjects were the three graves on the hill, Grace's marker flanked by the mountain folk who'd raised Seraphina, family connected across time and space and love. On quiet evenings, Seraphina would sit in Grace's rocking chair, sing the old songs to whoever needed hearing them, children with scraped knees, adults with broken hearts, anyone who understood that some music carried medicine in its melodies. The mountains held them all, kept their secrets and their joys, witnessed the transformation of strangers into family, of suspicion into acceptance, of loss into love that honored what came before while building something entirely new. Years passed. The children grew. The community prospered. The woman they'd once called too wild became the heart that held everything together. And in the garden, where Grace's marker stood among the growing things, wildflowers bloomed every spring, planted by no human hand, nurtured by rain and sun and the enduring power of love that transcends death itself. The story lived on in the songs Seraphina taught, in the children she delivered, in the families she helped build from the broken pieces of other lives. A legacy written not in legal documents but in acts of daily kindness, in the choice to create home wherever love was brave enough to take root. And that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.